In March 2022, Western regulators, everyone from the European Union to DirecTV, believed they had cleanly severed the Russian state media apparatus from the global public.
They pulled the broadcast licenses, they dismantled the servers, and they declared the network neutralized.
The cognitive trap you are caught in today is the censorship illusion.
Believing that a broadcast network can be neutralized by revoking a television license or blacklisting a URL is a dangerously incomplete map of modern information warfare. The state apparatus did not die under those sanctions.
It mutated. We are looking at a stack of Justice Department indictments, federal budget projections, and global threat intelligence reports. The centralized studios were abandoned out of strategic necessity.
The infrastructure shifted. It went from a traditional soft power broadcaster into a decentralized, AI-driven cognitive weapon.
What happens when an information weapon abandons the screen and decides to target the architecture or truth itself?
The official map paints a picture of total institutional collapse following the invasion of Ukraine. If you trace the history, this was a network that began in 2005 with a $30 million budget under Mikhailison,
designed merely to project a positive image of Russia.
By 2008, following the Georgian War, the Kremlin realized public relations were insufficient.
Margarita Simonian, the editor-in-chief, openly classified the network as an information weapon, funded and maintained like the Ministry of Defense.
Through the 2010s, they mastered algorithmic delivery, accumulating billions of views using viral animal videos and, natural disaster footage to artificially build an audience.
Before injecting the anti-Western narratives, they appeared untouchable.
Then came February 2022. The European Commission instituted a complete legal ban on RT and Sputnik.
The British media regulator, Ofcom, stripped their broadcasting licenses after dozens of accelerated investigations.
In the United States, Roku and DirecTV pulled the plug. RT America's corporate operator fired all 120 staff members.
Across New York, Washington, and Miami in a single afternoon, the Silicon Valley monopolies synchronously locked their accounts globally.
The system appeared eradicated. Look at the 2026 Russian federal budget, though.
The financial data presents a glaring contradiction. A state does not pour billions into a corpse.
The budget projects a 28% increase in state media funding, hitting a historic 146.3 billion rubles.
That equates to nearly 1.8 billion US dollars. ANO TV Novosti, the managing structure of RT, remains the largest monopoly recipient of state funding.
Taking in over 32 billion rubles alone, an eradicated network does not receive a historic surge in federal funding.
The broadcast model was replaced by an information laundromat. The Department of Justice's Tenet Media indictment exposes the hidden mechanism.
RT operatives Konstantin Kalashnikov and Elena Afanasieva discarded their official badges and created fake personas,
fabricating the identity of a wealthy Belgian investor named Edward Gregorian.
They utilized a chain of shell companies spanning Mauritius, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates, masking the transactions as electronics purchases.
They funneled $9.7 million directly to an American company based in Tennessee.
That Tennessee company, managed by Canadian bloggers, then contracted authentic North American influencers.
We are looking at conservative commentators with massive established audiences who claim they were unaware of the Kremlin source.
These influencers produced thousands of videos and podcasts focusing on hyper-local grievances. They amplified rage regarding inflation, illegal immigration, racial conflict,
and the financial burden of supporting Ukraine. The content was entirely severed from its geopolitical origin.
The mechanism's power lies in exploiting the parasocial trust audience's place in independent commentators. The Kremlin origin of the talking points is completely masked.
Viewers consume what they believe to be organic, independent analysis from local voices, entirely unaware that the financial architecture dictating those narratives was constructed in Moscow.
When a foreign anchor criticizes your government, your psychological defenses activate immediately.
When a podcast host you have listened to for 5 years expresses frustration over the price of groceries and connects it to foreign aid, you internalize the argument as your own.
The official network wasn't destroyed, it was laundered.
The technological front introduces a deeper layer of deception. The current consensus warns that the primary artificial intelligence threat is visual forgery, deepfakes.
Look at the campaigns Western intelligence has identified, like Doppelgänger and CopyCop.
The Doppelgänger network buys domain names visually identical to legitimate outlets. Der Spiegel, Le Parisien, The Washington Post?
They clone the websites perfectly. The CopyCop project, classified as Storm 1516, takes this further by utilizing local, uncensored versions of Meta's Llama 3 models.
They automatically rewrite legitimate news articles to inject anti-Western bias. They even leave technical errors in the text.
Literal prompt commands saying, "Please note this rewrite aims at objective reporting," proving there is zero human oversight.
They flood platforms with thousands of synthetic links, artificially driving them into trending topics using massive botnets.
That assumes the ultimate target is human engagement. The Pravda network, classified by French intelligence as Portal Combat, exposes a massive operational contradiction.
Pravda operates over 224 domains globally. They run sites targeting France, Spain, the UK, generating up to 3.6 million automated articles a year.
These sites make zero effort to attract human readers. Their interfaces are crude.
Their engagement metrics are non-existent. Why build an industrial-scale media factory managed by a Crimean IT company that ignores human audiences entirely?
The target is not the human reader. The target is the machine the human relies on.
This structural reality is known as LLM grooming. The Pravda network optimizes its sites specifically for web crawlers.
They structure their robots.txt files and sitemaps to invite the automated bots that build open-source databases.
The primary target of Common Crawl. That specific database serves as the foundational training data for the dominant generative language models.
ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. The scale of this infiltration reveals the true objective.
In November 2024, Pravda's footprint in the Common Crawl database was 37 English language articles.
By November 2025, that number exponentially exploded to 40,000 materials.
They are not trying to convince a human reading a screen. They are algorithmically poisoning the neural network before the human even asks a question.
You train a language model by feeding it a mathematically vast amount of text. It weighs the validity of a sentence by recognizing patterns across millions of documents.
If you inject 40,000 synthetic articles echoing the exact same geopolitical fiction into the foundational scrape, the model does not see a coordinated attack.
It sees a statistical consensus. Without a philosophical concept of truth, an algorithm defines reality purely by statistical exhaustion.
The model evaluates the credibility of a narrative based on how frequently it encounters it in the training data.
The geopolitical assumption framing international relations is that Western sanctions have successfully isolated Russia geographically and culturally.
The narratives insist that blocking broadcasts and cutting financial ties has trapped the state behind a digital iron curtain, cutting them off from the global majority.
Engagement metrics shatter that assumption completely. RT in Español fundamentally dwarfs the flagship English network in reach and interaction,
drawing tens of millions of users, predominantly from Mexico, Venezuela, Argentina, and Colombia.
They formed a cartel with the Venezuelan network Telesur and the Iranian state channel Hispan TV to syndicate this content. Look at the African continent.
Following the dismantling of the Wagner Group and the death of Yevgeny Prigozhin, the mercenary infrastructure was not abandoned.
The military component became the Africa Corps. The information component crystallized into a newly formed state-backed entity called the African Initiative.
Headed by an alleged FSB operative named Artem Kuriev, they are operating openly in the capitals of Mali and Burkina Faso.
They're hosting graffiti festivals, organizing street cleanups where participants are handed Vladimir Putin t-shirts.
And, running friendship lessons in local schools. The deeper geopolitical logic reviews a systematic acquisition of foundational media infrastructure.
Western entities like the BBC and Voice of America are cutting their budgets and retreating from these regions.
Russia is not merely spreading anti-colonial narratives or running campaigns to discredit Western vaccines. They are purchasing the vacuum.
They are flying local African bloggers and journalists to Moscow for luxury press tours.
The state agency Sputnik opened a massive editorial center in Addis Ababa for Amharic broadcasting.
RT is launching Portuguese broadcasts targeted at Mozambique and Angola, building a hub in Nairobi.
And signing syndication deals with over 30 local African television networks.
In Asia, they launched the RT Academy to train journalists from ASEAN countries, China, and India in Russian media standards.
While TASS rapidly expands its Urdu and Chinese desks, a media vacuum is never empty. It is simply waiting for a new architect.
The financial data maps this global flow perfectly, but it introduces a load-bearing anomaly.
The $1.8 billion state media budget costs Russian taxpayers roughly 2.81 billion rubles every single week.
To sustain this, the Russian government is systematically slashing critical domestic social budgets.
Funding for healthcare programs, aviation infrastructure, and the energy sector is being actively reduced.
This internal depletion is occurring precisely to sustain the global media machine and the expanding operations in the global south.
We cannot resolve that gap. The data details the financial allocation, but it fails to explain the internal calculus.
Of a regime willing to risk its own foundational domestic stability to maintain cognitive dominance abroad.
We see the ledger, but we do not see the risk assessment that justifies stripping healthcare from citizens to fund an artificial intelligence grooming farm in Crimea.
It functions as a dangerous indicator of existential desperation. The numbers alone cannot quantify a power structure that views information warfare as more critical to its survival than the physical and economic well-being of its own population.
We are witnessing a reallocation of state resources that prioritizes the export of an alternate reality over the maintenance of actual physical infrastructure.
The assumed defense against this machine is to verify your sources or utilize AI fact-checkers to separate truth from manipulation.
You assume the technology designed to synthesize the internet will filter out the noise and present you with an objective baseline.
NewsGuard data shows modern chatbots already regurgitate Pravda network fictions 34% of the time.
They repeat fabrications about U.S. bioweapons labs in Ukraine or fictional stories regarding the wealth of the Ukrainian president.
And they cite the Russian propaganda sites as reliable sources in their outputs. The LLM grooming campaign has already breached the containment walls of the systems we trust to curate our information.
You're looking for the lie in the answer. The machine has already rewritten the question.